Ho, ho, ho! Is this thing on? Mic check. One sleigh, two sleigh. That's right. I've got a podcast now. Stories, jokes, and some serious North Pole nonsense. Santa Has a Podcast is out now at santahasapodcast.com. Ho, ho, ho!
Support American jobs while standing up for your values. OldGloryDepot.com brings you conservative pride on premium, made-in-USA gear. Don't settle. Wear your patriotism proudly. Visit OldGloryDepot.com today.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Welcome to another episode of Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Sam Stone. Our first guest up today, a friend of the program, Alex Swoyer, serves as the Washington Times editor-at-large covering law, and politics in Washington, and leads the Sitdown with Alex Swoyer. Also, you definitely need to be checking out her columns, Seen, Heard, and Whispered. It is all fantastic stuff. We always appreciate her work. Thank you so much for joining us once again, Alex Swoyer.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So before we get to some other topics, maybe we can lead off with something that's kind of crazy happening right now. It ties to us here in Arizona. Is this the abduction of Savannah Guthrie's mom? This has been a crazy story. I'm not sure. I think it's kind of been told, but I don't think it's being told very well. What do you know about this?
Yeah, I think that you're right. It's kind of one of those that crime stories that you expect will be made into a 48 Hours, Dateline, Netflix documentary, something to that effect. I mean, 6 days now, I believe, the search for her mother has been ongoing. The latest, my understanding is that we've seen ransom notes sent to multiple news outlets. There's things from what I've read in the various reports that make investigators believe that this note could be legit, right? That it talks about things that only someone that was within the house would have knowledge of, like an Apple Watch. I think there was also something about a floodlight. And there's enough in the note, I guess, that they think that location-wise that she hasn't necessarily left the area. My question, I guess, as a lawyer is like, I don't know if there's been pictures of any of these, if the investigators have shared that, but whether there's copycats doing multiple ransom notes, if it's just the same one, was it handwritten, was it typed? If it's handwritten, then you think they're going to want to start looking at handwriting samples of people close to, I believe Nancy Guthrie is her name, Savannah's mother. One of the things that, at first that I thought was eyebrow raising was that there was no signs of forced entry, which makes you think, if you've covered enough of these or been involved in the legal industry or world, is that she probably recognized or knew who was coming into the house or allowed them in. That's not always the case, right? But that's usually an assumption.
Well, so that's an interesting assumption, too, because I tend to think that tracks. One of the things you sort of alluded to is kidnappings and abductions for money around the world. It's very different. I was having this discussion with a friend yesterday. It's very different outside of this country where these things are fairly common. In the U.S., and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, most kidnappings are either sexually motivated, violently motivated, or they are family member type things. The idea that you might have someone who is connected to the family, that tracks. But at the same time, there's questions about, is this some sort of, encroachment of foreign abduction model into the United States?
No, that's a good question, because one of the things that's being demanded is, I think, Bitcoin, right?
Right.
And we know there's that international element to Bitcoin. I guess there's always an international element to all money, correct? But Bitcoin specifically, it's just kind of like the Wild West of money at this point.
It's a lot harder for governments to track where it's going.
That's correct. And so that's interesting to me. It makes me beg the question of, you know, did someone have knowledge that she had Bitcoin or that the family has a significant amount of Bitcoin? Do they have a significant amount of Bitcoin? Is this just random? Why Bitcoin, right? Like, I guess maybe because that's an element, like you said, it would be easier for criminals. But it's like, you know, what came to my mind was Savannah Guthrie. I mean, when you're on air like that every morning, do you share information like that? Did she talk about Bitcoin? Was there a segment? It just kind of, it's one of those things that, you know, your mind starts to go in different directions. But yeah, I think like when you talk about an international element, I'm sure investigators are not ruling anything out at this point. I did kind of think local authorities, I'm sure they're under a lot of intense pressure with the focus from the media. But I guess you could say maybe less impressed with one of their press conferences I saw. I think it was earlier this week on this. I think maybe it was Tuesday. It just kind of seems like, well, we're not going to do this daily. We're going to bring you in next time something breaks. I think they had one yesterday, possibly. They said they were going to do something Thursday. It just kind of seemed, given the amount of attention on this and the daily news coverage, that it would be something that investigators will be talking to outlets regularly.
I want to touch on one other thing here, because you mentioned some of these local news outlets getting this ransom letter. Reportedly, also TMZ got it and broke the news of its existence, which the locals hid. How significant? I mean, I think it's sort of entirely within TMZ's realm that they would do something that could put somebody at danger for eyeballs. But why does the FBI tell people or tell stations, don't broadcast this, just contact us?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. It's not surprising that TMZ would do that. We talk about the Wild West of money being Bitcoin. Well, the Wild West of journalism is sometimes those types of, I guess you could say, tabloid outlets. And I give it to TMZ. They break a lot of news, but at the same time, there's always a cost. And the idea of having these ransom notes, that's evidence, and investigators will want that to be kept close to the belt. They'll want to be able to vet that and make sure it's authentic. They also, you know, for journalist purposes, you don't want to put fake news out there or misrepresentations. So it's always, I think, due diligence to contact investigators to make sure it's authentic, one, before you would report anything, and two, to help further the investigation and not put anyone's lives at risk.
I want to cover just two more things real quick here before we move on. One is there an impression that you have or others you've talked to that the investigation didn't get off the ground quickly enough?
I don't have enough. Haven't done any interviews, I think, to be honest, to be able to say, like, do I think that there was a ball dropped? I think that it just seems like being in national press in Washington, D.C., and used to the press conferences I'm used to covering, that the one I mentioned, I think it was Tuesday, that I caught live with I don't know if it was the local sheriff, but it's definitely
Chris Nanos, the Pima County sheriff. Yeah, it just kind of seemed not necessarily well organized. I think that it seems like it could have been handled better. One of the things he complained about was having to take questions or contact with the media from like the time he started work till about 10 o'clock at night. I mean, yeah, like, well, you have a big case. That's your job. Okay.
Like, I mean, you know, sorry, we all work a lot. Like, I just kind of was taken back by some of the comments.
Like, so I want to throw in something that maybe isn't out there anywhere or people don't really understand the background of. We moved to Tucson, Pima County, my family, when I was 14, 15. I lived there for about 15 years. That is a very blue county with a very blue center city that has gutted their police and sheriff's departments over the years. So Nanos may actually have a very legitimate issue that he has nowhere near, now with the FBI, and it's different, but nowhere near the bandwidth to handle this appropriately.
Yeah, it comes across like that. You wonder, for someone that doesn't know the area, it came across like, is this just such a small town that they're not used to something of this magnitude? Maybe you're right, like with the funding and the policies that also comes into play.
You're talking about Arizona's second largest city and its second most populous county. I mean, we're not.
Yeah, they should.
This is not Santa Cruz, which is tiny and nowhere.
They should have the resources and the funding to be able to maintain this. And not only that, but like, I mean, professional communicators too, that would help their law enforcement better communicate with the press and get the details out that need to be shared with the public, and those that don't, that could harm Nancy Guthrie if she's still alive, to make sure that that's kept close to the belt. It just seems a bit, I don't know, messy. Is messy the right word to say?
It seems messy to me. It definitely seems messy to me. Last one here, because there is a scenario in our modern world where someone doesn't have to break into a house and it's delivery.
That's true.
Right?
You're right. And someone could pose as a delivery person to gain access.
And is that,
absolutely.
I'm just going to throw out our version of a PSA here on Breaking Battlegrounds. Is this a lesson for people not to be opening the door, and even when they think it's DoorDash?
Yeah, I think that's a safety lesson that I'm trying to teach my 4-year-old, that we don't go to the door and open it without an adult present, or even to that effect. Like I like to watch my Ring doorbell and let deliveries just sit there or talk through the doorbell. I don't know. I thought there was some reporting that she did have cameras. So I guess the question is, what's happened with that? That was one of those things where I think there was speculation about what took law enforcement so long to be able to review them and give updates to the press about what was going on with the videos. I think that was on Tuesday as well when I was catching that press conference. And I that you would think that would be one of the first things that they would go to and want to get information out as soon as possible.
Fantastic. Alex, we have just about 2 minutes left in this segment. We're going to be bringing you back for the next one, but 2 more topics we want to cover. You've done a lot of fantastic reporting on Melania Trump, and I want to get to that, but I want to give that time in the next segment. Can we real quick hit on something going on right now, is this RNC, DNC fundraising, and what we're seeing in terms of the cash on hand for the midterms?
Yeah. So, I'm glad you asked me about this, because I used to, when I covered Capitol Hill, I was super plugged into this, but I'm not quite as much anymore. I need to start tracking it. But from my research, what it looks like is that House Republicans are outpacing Democrats. They seem to have a slight edge ahead of the midterms. I think it looked at the NRCC was raising $117 million against the DCC's $115 million. Money matters, but it's also, I think, Senate races, Republicans aren't as they don't have a slight lead on Democrats there, and especially from some of my research, it looks like there's some vulnerable seats, Georgia, North Carolina, Ohio, that Republicans would really want to hone in on, because they have a 53 seat majority. They need 60, right, to pass any legislation. Yep. So they want to definitely defend their majority and hopefully pick up seats.
And how the congressional thing is actually a bit of a split from the past, right? We have just 1 minute left here, but it's a bit of a split. Democrats have traditionally kind of won the fundraising in that area.
They have, but I think what we have been seeing is that there's frustration with the Democratic voters and their party. I mean, one of the things we were chatting about, I was at Newsmax yesterday, and some of us off camera were just like, who is the party leader for them? Yeah. I think it's a big question,
Great question.
The way things are happening with the Clintons being called in to testify about Epstein, there seems to be Democrats that are supporting that. Are they ready to turn, no longer are the Clintons looked at as, a Democratic leader. Maybe President Obama still has control. Is it Mamdani? Is it that wing of the party, that faction? I think it's just kind of a mess, and maybe those fundraising numbers are showing that.
It's a mess, but one person who isn't is Melania Trump, and we're going to be coming back to talk more about her with Alex Swoyer here in just a moment. Stay tuned.
All right, imagine this. You're running for president. Yes, president. What's the first thing you need? Well, besides the $1 million fundraising, you need to secure your web domain. You need your name, .vote. Easy to remember, straight to the point, and a direct link to your campaign. No, but seriously, whether you're getting out to vote or convincing people that yes, you can fix the potholes on Main Street, a .vote domain helps you stand out. It's not just a website, it's a call to action. Head over to GoDaddy.com or Name.com, Type in your name, .vote, and boom, you're ready to make a lasting impact. Get started today with your .vote web address.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds with your host, Sam Stone. We're continuing on now with Alex Swoyer. Alex, you have written some really interesting pieces on Melania Trump, and one of them, how Melania has done more in 1 year than Joe Biden did in 4. Nobody in this world seems to know how much she is doing. I loved reading this. Tell folks what's going on there.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've been able to catch the Melania documentary, but I was able to go to the premiere here in DC at the Trump Kennedy Center. It was great. I think that everyone should see it. It kind of gives you a glimpse inside of what the First Lady is thinking. There's a few moments, I would say, like sweet moments, that you actually see a little bit more interaction with President Trump and the First Lady in their relationship. I think when they're out in public, they both kind of seem rather robotic. But when in the documentary, they just seem more relatable as a couple. There's also a part where she is watching him practice his inaugural speech, and she suggests a change in the speech, and he looks at her, and they end up going with her change, and then it flashes to his actual delivering of the inaugural speech, and he uses the word she wanted, and then he turns around and looks at her, and she looks at him, and she smiles, and it's just like one of those things that when you saw it live, it was like, it just looked like he was just, turning around, looking at people. But now that you knew the background of it, it was like a little inside joke between them. It was kind of cute. So there's moments like that. That's pretty cool. It shows that she has some direction and control. There was also a part where they were sitting down. I think they were talking to Secret Service at the time about the inauguration and where he could safely get out of the vehicle. It's common that the president and first lady the family will get out and at certain points and wave to people and walk a little bit. And given that the president had 2 assassination attempts during the campaign, she raised questions. She says, well, where is it? Is it safe? And the Secret Service said yes. And she goes, well, we've been told that before. And she was like, they both looked at each other, the president and the first lady, and she said something like, well, this is something we're going to have to talk about. And then if you remember, they did not get out of the car.
Right.
And of course, it was very cold that day, but maybe they decided, it kind of just gave it made your eyebrows go up, like maybe that was a decision. They just really didn't have confidence at that point in exiting the vehicle.
Well, and reasonably so. I mean, you can understand a woman's fear for her family and her husband in that situation.
Yeah. And just getting her, she would get in the vehicle when they would meet each other, and you can kind of hear from their mics, like, oh, how are you? How's your day? Something to that effect. And then she's like, have you talked to Barron? Like, it just kind of feels like, all of us that are have kids or married, it's more relatable than, I guess, the image that we get to see constantly out there. So I enjoyed it. I think people would. There's a couple things that she was working on in the documentary as well. To your point, she was really instrumental. She works Capitol Hill. That was one of the things that when I talked to the Democrat who didn't go on the record with his comments about Melania, but he basically told me, Joe Biden didn't work Capitol Hill like that. Melania did to pass the Take It Down Act. Remember the intimate images or the deep fakes that are shared online? Outlets have warning to be able to take them down. If not, there could be criminal penalties. She pushed for that. She was also in the documentary Zooming with female leaders of other countries, like the French president's wife, Macron's wife, asking for them to join her in, she's really focusing on youth safety and mental health in the aspect of social media. She wanted to know what other countries were doing to help keep, minors safe online. Specifically, we've talked, I don't know if I've talked to you in the past, but it's been a topic that keeps popping up, is like some of these countries, I think Australia, for example, banning social media for minors until they're over 16. Should America do something like that? So it was interesting to see that aspect of her work.
I think that's tough under American law, right? But it's probably be good for the kids. Like, I tend to think their kids are going to probably benefit from not being on social media, given all the data we have about how deleterious it's become, psychologically.
Yeah, I actually was doing Laura Trump's podcast I don't know if it was a couple months ago, and we explored this topic. And she's a mom. I have a 4-year-old, and that was one of the things we both, not to sound so like neither of us like big like regulation. Like
Right,
we both
right.
agree, like, do you really want to like have the government doing this? But at the same time, like, we protect kids when it comes to smoking, vaping. You're supposed to, right? Like these
Theoretically,
alcohol.
pornography, right? I mean,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. So this is one of those things where I think we're getting more and more data out towards you out west in California. There's that trial ongoing right now, if you
Hmm.
recall. I think it's like a few school districts that have gotten together, and maybe like even dozens of school districts at this point. I started covering it
It's
back
a
when they
pretty large
first.
group, yeah.
Yeah, when they first started launching the lawsuit, I covered it, and I've kind of been tracking it from afar. But they have their lawsuit against social media companies, basically saying, they want increased services for school counseling because of the damage that it's being done with kids. And like according to some of the reports, some of the discovery that's come out is like some of these execs at these large social media companies are aware that this is like a drug, right? And
It's
it
one of the
just
rare times I can say I'm looking on what California Democrats are doing and saying this might be really important and good, actually, to get
Yeah,
this
and
out.
to be honest, like with you and I talking about it, everyone I've talked to about it seems on the same page. This is probably one of those issues that's like well over 70-80% polling, right? So why wouldn't, Democratic and Republican lawmakers get together and do something? This
What,
is actually a point where they could have some common ground,
and you're
which
talking
is
about
unique here.
really serious harms that these companies, frankly, knew they, appear to have known they were causing for children.
Right. I mean, like one, you talk about being targets, like predators out there going
Hmm.
after them on social media. That's one aspect. The other is mental health. The ability for them to have, well, I think bulimia and anorexia was one of the things explored for young women, but also the bullying aspect, suicide rates, all of that.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. We have just about 2 minutes left here, and I want to let you have some time right at the end to tell folks how to follow your work because we are big fans of yours here on Breaking Battlegrounds. But I want to touch one last thing because I was thinking about this at the start of this segment. It seems, and you are closer to this than I am, it seems like Donald Trump and Melania Trump have a better relationship both as First Lady and President and as man and wife in this term than they did in the first term. Like everything that's happened appears to have brought them together.
I think that is a good observation. I wish we had a documentary from the first
Yeah.
administration for Melania to be able to compare. But yeah, I mean, you definitely see moments of unity between the two of them being on the same page. It seems like they have, he values her consultation. I think also what they went through with the raid at Mar-a-Lago, just all the lawfare you and I have talked about in the
Hmm.
past about like the book I wrote with Lawless Lawfare, talking to the family. I mean, I interviewed Don Jr. and Laura Trump for that, and they both said like, they thought if he didn't win, the family expected him to have to go to jail. So I think like that monumental what they went through, that it was just its impact. I'm sure it's impacted them personally, individually, and then as a couple and a family
It
for
was
sure.
it was a crucible, and they seem to have come through it stronger. Alex Swoyer, we always love having you on this program. How do people follow you and stay up with everything you're doing?
Yeah, they can follow me at the WashingtonTimes.com. I have my column Seen, Heard, Whispered. I'm leaking out every week a little bit of political rumors going on here in the nation's capital. So anyone that likes that can subscribe there. And then they can follow me on X at A Swoyer, Swoyer. And thank you so much for always having me. I enjoy chatting with you.
Likewise, we love having you on this program. Thank you so much for joining you. I know you have a busy morning, so we'll let you go, but we love obviously having you on as much as possible. Thank you again.
Thank you. I can't wait to join again.
Fantastic. Folks, stay tuned. More Breaking Battlegrounds is coming right up. And if you're not already, go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Sign up for all the extras. Back soon.
Old Glory Depot isn't just a website. It's a movement. Featuring unapologetically conservative shirts and gear, we're proud to deliver 100% American-made products. From premium materials to bold designs, every purchase supports American jobs and celebrates our country. Show your pride, support your values, and shop oldglorydepot.com because patriotism never goes out of style.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our second guest is Jon Fleischman. Jon has spent over 35 years in the trenches of California politics, which as a Republican is a remarkable, remarkable fight to have engaged in. He's worked at every level of government, advised hundreds of campaigns, and written more than 2,500 political columns. And he's got some fantastic stuff out right now via his site, So Does It Matter. We definitely recommend you check that out at sodoesitmatter.com. Jon Fleischman, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me on the program. I was just telling you right before we went live that it's a bit surreal to be on your program. You guys do such a great job, and thank you for doing what you do to help spread the word to a lot of people about a lot of crazy things happening in the United States.
Well, it's a mutual fan club because we love your work also. And I want to start out, just jump real quick because we only have a short time in this segment, into two quick issues you've talked about, and then we're going to use the final segment to really get into some ed choice stuff that's going on in California. But real quick, latest polling out from Pew Research Center. I think there's a lot of people on the Republican side out there right now who aren't admitting that Donald Trump is really taking a beating with the middle right now.
Yeah, well, this is what happens, by the way. This is not unusual for a second-term president after their first year. But, Pew's research, and I use Pew a lot because I really trust their results, and they're very good about giving year over year, asking the same questions. So
they ask the same questions in the same way, and they use the same data models, which actually makes a legit trend.
Right, exactly. And so what we've got right now is that amongst all voters, when you ask the question of, the way, do you approve of the way that Donald Trump is handling his job? Donald Trump's approval rating in that regard is down to 37%, and his disapproval rating is at 61%. But the thing that's the most significant about this change, frankly, there was no drop possible for Democrats. President Trump's numbers have dropped because he's losing Republicans. And when we say losing Republicans, it's all relative. President Trump has enjoyed more support amongst Republicans in his time in office than I think any president since Reagan, up and over well into the 90% approval ratings, and now it's dropped considerably. So now we're at a point where Republicans have now dropped to 67% approval rating. So that's a really big drop, and obviously that's still a healthy 2/3 of all Republicans support him. But he's got an 18% group of Republicans who think that he's going off on the wrong track, and so this as we get into the midterms,
that's a big number. Yeah,
and I think a lot of it has to do with people vote about the economy, and when President Trump was reelected, he was able to run on Biden's record on the economy, and then for better or for worse, when he became president, Donald Trump introduced his tariffs. It was very controversial, and he, in that process, took over the economy. It went from being the Biden economy to the Trump economy in the minds of voters very, very quickly. And so now he owns the economy, but everybody still knows when you get gas, when you go to the grocery store, everything's still really expensive. And then underlying all of this is the housing crisis right now, where housing prices are really high, interest rates are really high. And so it's a tough economic time, and it may or may not be fair to the president, but when you've got the big job, you get everyone's expecting you to solve it.
Did he overpromise? And maybe he had to, but one of the things I kept saying and kind of thinking and talking with people about when he was running is these sort of, over the top proclamations, I'm going to turn this around right away, right? The costs are going to come down immediately.
I'm fond of saying that Donald Trump only has one speed, ludicrous speed, if you remember the old movie. But, I think at the end of the day, I think a big, part of the challenge and a big part of the problem is exactly that. The presidency of the United States was designed to have limitations on it. When the Constitution was written, we'd only just overturned a king 10 years earlier. And so the Constitution was written to really spread out powers in our government and not really leave too much of it vested with one person. So it's not like President Trump could put his finger down and change the interest rates, and he's had a lot of challenges to a lot of the stuff he's doing. And so I do think there's a lot of over-promising going on, and it's pretty challenging. By the way, I did want to circle back and mention, when I said there was no room for the president to drop amongst Democrats, his approval rating amongst Democrats is a big fat 2%. So,
I really want to meet those 2%. I would love to have a conversation with them because either
I know a couple of them, and I could tell you those 2% are people that are like, you know what, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal, but close the damn border.
Okay.
I think that's where they lie, because when you look at some of the other polling numbers by issue, you'll see that the border issue is one. Well, I guess now immigration's turned into two issues. There's interior enforcement versus border enforcement. And on border enforcement, Donald Trump still holds very wide margins of happiness on what he's done there.
The interior, not so much. We're going to be coming back with more from Jon Fleischman here in just a moment. Folks, follow him on X at Flash Report or go to sodoesitmatter.com to stay up with his work. We're coming back with more in just a moment.
Sam and I are always talking about being prepared, whether it's hurricanes in Florida, earthquakes in California, flooding in Arizona, or supply chain disruptions.
Exactly, Chuck. When pharmacies shut down, it does not matter how tough you are, you still need access to critical medicine.
That's why we trust Jace Medical. The Jace case comes with 5 life-saving antibiotics and key over-the-counter meds, so you're covered when things get disrupted.
And Jace goes beyond just the Jace case. They also offer first aid kits, daily prescriptions, and long-term nutrition with Jace Pantry. Don't wait for the next hurricane warning or natural disaster. Take control of your health and peace of mind today.
Visit jace.com and use code FUTURE at checkout for $10 off your order. That's FUTURE at JASE.com.
In today's digital world, standing out is more important than ever. Whether you're running for office, leading a cause, or hosting a vote for the cutest pet in town, you need a web domain that's simple, memorable, and action-oriented. You need a .vote web domain. It's clear, impactful, and establishes a lasting presence for your campaign. Don't wait. Head to GoDaddy.com or name.com, type in your name.vote, and get started today. Because after all, every pet deserves a web address that's as special as they are.
All right, welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. We're continuing on now with Jon Fleischman. He is at Flash Report or SoDoesItMatter.com. You definitely want to stay in touch with his work. He has dug into California politics for 35 years. We want to get into some issues around educational choice that are in the big, beautiful bill and how that affects California because of some of the things Gavin Newsom's doing. Right as we were going out, I was saying, you've kind of got this breakdown red state versus blue state, that a lot of these policies Trump is implementing are being implemented one way in blue states and a very different way in red states, and that's creating kind of a break in the economy from what we're seeing. But that applies to a lot of different stuff.
It does.
Yeah. So how much is someone like Gavin Newsom able to diffuse essentially or push aside the Trump agenda with his powers in the state? Because I think we're seeing a huge dichotomy between blue states and red states now.
Yeah. So in a lot of cases, what you've got is the pros and the cons of the 10th Amendment to the United States. If you embrace the idea of federalism and the idea that there's a distinct role for the federal government on domestic affairs and a distinct role for state governments, you start to realize that there's only so much help you can give to a state that doesn't seem to want it. Right. And so that really allows Gavin Newsom to have a lot of latitude. Just this week, EPA Administrator Zeldin and SBA Administrator Loeffler were in the Palisades as President Trump issued an executive order talking about we're gonna get fire recovery going in LA.
Right.
And but they're quickly finding out there's only so much you can do because the federal government doesn't control permitting and decision making at the local level. But and I'm just giving that as an anecdotal example.
No, it's a great example.
But maybe the best, my favorite example is the concept of federalism is in a key part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that the president signed on July 4th of last year. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the most significant programs. It's an educational scholarship, school choice scholarship program that basically says that if you're a taxpayer, you have the ability, whatever your tax liability is to the federal government, for every taxpayer in your house, you can delegate $1,700 of that money, that liability, instead to a nonprofit that helps with school choice and take it straight off your federal tax bill. So it costs you nothing, and it creates a massive reservoir of money to help create opportunity choice for those kids who may be stuck in a school that is not the best serving school, or bringing in some competition into the school system. But what Republicans did, and again in an ode to federalism, they said in order for the taxpayers in a state to be able to participate in this program, there has to be sign off by the state government, which the IRS has ruled to mean either the governor or a bill through the governor and signed by the legislature and signed by the governor. And so far, as of today, 27 states in the United States have joined this program, allowing their federal taxpayers in their state to participate in this program starting with the 2027 tax year. But there are states and by the way, of those 27, 25 of them have Republican governors. One of them had a Republican governor in Virginia, Jim Gilmore, but now that he's gone, but he opted into it before he left.
Okay.
That was something he was able to do. And then Jared Polis, who's the Democratic governor of Colorado, said what all of us would say: why wouldn't you allow your taxpayers to do this if they want? And so that's where we get into the story about why California, along with some other big states like New York and Illinois, will never opt into this program.
Showing once again my contention, Jared Polis is actually the smartest governor on the Dem side.
He is, and understand, if you're a conservative, there's a lot to like and a lot to dislike about him. His zeal for taking firearms from people knows no bounds.
Oh, no,
so
it
really
doesn't.
depends on the issue of the day. But yeah, on some significant issues, Jared Polis is more, I would call, libertarian than liberal.
Right.
But so the way that it works, I'm going to give the horror story of California.
Well, before you get the horror story, what were the actual uses of this money? Like, is this money building buildings? Is it creating institutions? Is it defraying
this
costs?
This money can be used by nonprofits to fund tutors. It could be used to fund actual charter schools to be built. That's I think its main intention, and it could be used. And by the way, it unshackles. It allows you to fund whatever you want. So if you want to give some money to a nonprofit that's going to give additional help to existing public schools, including your child's public school, great. It can go to that and provide additional resources. But it can also be used to stand up a charter school or right where you live, where one doesn't exist. And the point is that it empowers the parents and it takes away all the chains. So it could be a public school. It can even be a faith-based religious school. Anybody that's providing a bona fide education to children can benefit from you having your choice with what you want to do with your federal tax credit that you're giving to these entities. And I suspect the market will respond by hundreds, if not thousands, of people standing up different organizations to help kids. And I'm sure they'll all come with their own rating system as people try to sort out what works and doesn't work. That's how the market works. But here in California, we're never going to get to participate in that. And that's because Governor Newsom, who wants to be your president if you're not from California, is the most pay-for-play governor in the entire country. And when I say that, the California Teachers Association, and this is really hard for a lot of people to absorb, spends over $200 million every election cycle on politics in California. It's a tremendous amount of money.
Goodness.
And the bulk of that money is going to purchase a governor, an attorney general, and supermajorities in the California legislature that literally do whatever they want. And it's right at the very front end of the California Teachers Association's kind of like statement of why they exist is their opposition to educational choice, their opposition to non-public school options. And so they are dead fast opposed to this part of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And they have asked the governor not to sign it, which is really code for he will not sign it because he has a 100% track record of fealty. And if you want to know why, just look for the millions of dollars they donated against his recall. Look for the millions of dollars. They put in $3 million last November, or for the election last November, on the Prop 50, which changed the congressional lines in California. $3 million. And it's really straightforward. He does what they want, and then
and they fund
do what
him.
he wants, and it's a symbiotic relationship that all it does is cut out we the people.
Well,
and so it's a big challenge and it's a big problem because that's a lot of Californians that are not going to be able to participate in what is really a tremendous program that Republicans have made available. And like you said, in these 27 largely Republican states, this money's going to flow and it's going to help the children, and it's increasing this divide, red state, blue state divide, where blue states are going to continue to descend and red states are going to continue to attract more and more people that want a prosperous life.
Well, in this program, I mean, there's a couple of things that pop out to me because I have some background working around education and education issues. First off, this is the type of program that can be used very effectively to direct charter resources into lower income communities to help build charter schools where they can do the most good, right?
100%.
Okay. That is a huge loss for people, working families who are living on the edge all across California. That's one. Two, to do that, one of the biggest barriers to charter schools and school choice and other opportunities across the country really is facilities costs and maintenance and building them. And public schools all have mechanisms to provide for capital costs, but those don't exist for charters. Here in Arizona, we actually do. We created a program called Independent Development Authorities that can issue government bonds to support charter development. That's very different than other states. But this would really open the door that way, right? This money can be used as a seed for all the land and construction loans you need to really expand a quality system. And the results are massively different right now. Public schools are just not pulling their weight.
Well, this is the part that's the most nonsensical, right? This is an opportunity for millions of Californians to put, money for each one of them into the education system in California at literally no cost. It's the greatest release of funds that you can think of to help flood the education zone. And this is where you get the California Teachers Association. They do not want competition because they don't want to demonstrate how poorly things are going in public schools. This is tangential, but it's worth mentioning because I've written about it. There was a study that came out of the University of California in San Diego just a couple of months ago. And here in California, we no longer use the SAT, objective testing as part of applications into our California colleges because now you want to use more subjective criteria like somebody's background and their hardships and all of that. And so they went through, because after you get admitted to the university, they do have to give you a placement exam to figure out what classes you need to go into. What do you actually know versus what you don't know? And what they found out is that a huge percentage of these students who are coming out of California public schools with A's in trigonometry, geometry, algebra 2, literally were showing like elementary school and middle school proficiency in math. They were simply being graduated out without having to objectively learn anything.
With A's.
So, And so this is the kind of stuff they can get away with because parents have no choice.
Well, and there are real consequences. I mean, to focus on the actual impacts to people, I want to point out something that's been in the news a little bit in the past, but the admissions for UCLA Medical School, where they dropped a lot of these tests, the qualifications have gone down in many cases.
It's terrible. I do a feature at SoDoesItMatter.com. Every Friday we do our winners and losers of the week. And last week we made the dean of the medical school the loser of the week because she's currently being sued by the federal government because they are currently going through, with their DEI type programs, and the best and the brightest you would think would automatically be admitted to be, new doctors or to be trained to be new doctors. But what they're doing instead is they're filling up racial quotas and trying to find people based on their adversity. And, if there's one career where you want to say, you know what, I want to go to the doctor's office and I want to make sure that whoever it is, I don't care what the color, race, ethnicity of my doctor is.
I don't care if I can understand what they're saying or their handwriting. I just want to know they're great at their job.
Exactly. And so there's a current federal lawsuit going on there. And that gets back to what we talked about. What are some of the things that the federal government can do? Well, all these civil rights violations are under the purview of the federal government, who gets to enforce United States constitutional rights. And as a Californian, thank God we still have federal constitutional rights here.
Now,
so Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon and her crew at the Civil Rights Division have been very aggressive in pushing on California with a lot of great results. But we really need to change out the leadership we have here. It's really tough.
Now, I've got an interesting one because maybe you have insight into this. This one's actually baffled me a little bit, is this whole issue. I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball with our last minute and a half here, but the truck drivers, DOT is going after all these essentially poorly tested, unlicensed truck drivers who are not in the country legally, blah, blah, blah. California is the kind of the epicenter of issuing that. That's an interesting one because I always thought the California Teamsters unions would prevent that.
You know what? The Teamsters are part of a broader coalition, but they've struck a deal. In Sacramento, it's a coalition between labor and environmental groups. And they want to shut down all the trucking because of all the emissions that come from the trucks. And so it gets very, very complicated. But I will tell you, there is a big movement here in California to eliminate completely the distinction between people that are here legally and people that are here illegally. And we've seen everything happen in Minnesota. It happens here in California. And I think it goes back to your thesis, which is that we're seeing two Americas. There's the red state America and the blue state America. And this is just one more example. We could talk about the redistricting that's going to happen in 2032. We don't have time.
No, we're going to have to.
Even there, you're going to see all the demographic trends as people are moving. Red states are going to pick up votes and members of Congress and electoral votes, and blue states are going to lose them.
Absolutely. Jon Fleischman, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic discussion. I very much look forward to having you back on here again in the future. Folks, follow him on X at Flash Report, online at sodoesitmatter.com, and go to breakingbattlegrounds.vote. Sign up for the podcast. Sign up for all the extra content on Substack. We're bringing you tons of great stuff right now there. We have all sorts of new writers contributing, so you definitely want to be part of that. And we will see you on the air next week.
I say this every election cycle, and I'll say it again. The 2024 political field was intense, so don't get left behind in 2025. If you're running for office, the first thing on your to-do list should be securing your name on the web. With a yourname.vote domain from GoDaddy.com, you'll stand out and make your mark. Don't wait. Get yours today.
Ho, 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 ho. What do you get when you mix cocoa, candy canes, and strong Wi-Fi signals? You get a podcast. That's right, Santa has a podcast. I'm telling stories from the North Pole, sharing elf updates, and answering your questions. And yes, spilling some holiday secrets. It's festive, it's fun, and fueled entirely by cookies. Tune in wherever you get your podcast. It's Santa Has a Podcast. Just press play.
Welcome back to Breaking Battlegrounds. Our next guest up today, Jessica Milan Patterson, wife, mother, and former chairwoman of the California Republican Party, first woman and Latina to serve as the chair. Prior to her election, Jessica was CEO and co-founder of California Trailblazers, an organization that recruits, trains, and helps elect Republican candidates to state legislative offices. Which is an unbelievably necessary thing for people on our side of the aisle across the country to try to replicate this program that Jessica has created. And we want to talk about that a little bit, but mostly we want to talk about ridiculous Democrats in California. Jessica Patterson, welcome to the program.
We're going to need a lot longer than 30 minutes because there's so many ridiculous Democrats here in California. I mean, you could actually have a whole show on it.
Well, if we were going to try to touch on every ridiculous Democrat in California in 30 minutes, you'd just be listing their names until the end. It probably wouldn't have finished.
It's very true. It's a special place, California, but as the rest of the country is frozen, we are spending time at the beach, and it's 75 to 85 and sunny. So this is why crazy people like me stay here and fight.
Yeah, see, she has the beach. I have 75 and sunny also here in Arizona. We like to rub this in when we can.
We do. It is one of the few things we get to brag about. We get 75 and sunny in January, but we have to deal with Gavin Newsom all year long.
Well, and that makes it. But see, and that's why I am out. You're tougher and braver than I am because I could not do that. He is just loony at this point. what is going on out there? What is driving this? I know this guy has presidential ambitions, but everything he's ever touched has turned to trash.
It has, and yet he seems to fail up with every single failure. He gets pushed onto a higher office. And that's what this is. And that's what it's been for, the last 20 plus years that I've been in politics, is watching Gavin Newsom climb the ropes. And it's always been with the same end goal in mind. And that is, he wants to be president of the United States. Before President Biden had gotten out of the race, I had been talking about Gavin Newsom trying to be the heir apparent when they pushed President Biden out of the Democratic nomination. And I think that he felt snuffed by the fact that Kamala Harris was coronated into that position. He was out there. He did his red state tour. He was out there in the swing states. They had him out as a surrogate more often than they had Joe Biden or Kamala Harris out there, because both of them had lower approval ratings. And so I think that he really felt snubbed in the last go around. I think that he probably would have lost to President Trump as well. I think the entire country was just so sick and tired of what they had seen over the last 4 years. They were ready for change. They were ready to go back to those prosperous Trump years. And I think that Gavin Newsom has been, ever since then, trying to sharpen the blade and making sure that he stays relevant, whether it's, hopping on the Soros jet and heading over to Davos, or visiting other parts of the country, and completely neglecting his responsibilities as governor here in California, building out his podcast. These are all steps that this man has made because he believes that he is going to be the president of the United States.
Well, okay, so that actually leads me to sort of an interesting thought or question here. This guy occasionally tries to go out in there and claim his low, middle class working roots, low income roots. Of course, his parents were friends with the Gettys and most of the wealthiest people in Los Angeles and moved in those circles with significant wealth themselves. Has that man ever traveled on anything but a private jet?
Yeah, actually, because in California, the Constitution requires, we don't have a jet for our governor. So I've actually been on Southwest flights with Governor Gavin Newsom. I've actually been on Southwest flights with Governor Brown. So he has flown commercially, but I think that's more of a requirement than it is something that he would do because he's a man of the people.
I mean, look, I certainly admit it's nobody's preference. Anyone who has a chance to fly on a private jet is taking that one. Southwest is great, but there's come on. But this is, this guy really has had, lately, and I want to touch on something here in Arizona, is the refineries and the California's oil and refining industry is killing us here, and it's hurting people in other states as well, in Nevada and Utah. These type of politicians like Gavin Newsom have negative impacts beyond their borders.
Absolutely. And of course, Californians have been hit the hardest with these policies that Governor Newsom has put forward, and the energy sector is such a great reflection of it. California has more natural resources than we could use. And, when we went through those first 4 years in the Trump administration, and we had gone to being energy independent, and we were no longer relying on our enemies to, fuel the United States of America, that was a really great time for us. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, here in California, they're shutting down everything that they possibly can. And not only are we now purchasing, and no one has a plan to do anything else because we're not consuming less.
Right. Demand is going up.
Exactly. And so no one has a plan to do it. So what do we end up doing? We end up buying more oil from our foreign adversaries. Not only that, but the restrictions and the requirements that they have put into place in California makes it so what we are doing here when it comes to energy needs is the cleanest and the best for the environment. We're not only getting our oil from our enemies, but it's not as clean as it would if we used the natural resources we have here.
Well, and you're shipping it around the globe.
Exactly. So you're actually harming your cause. We are making things worse. It makes you like scratch your head, like, okay, it's like the plastic bag ban, and then we find out we're actually consuming more plastic bags, but people are just having to pay for them, and it's worse for the environment.
Yeah.
So all of these different things, it's well intentioned, often go awry here, and we've become that petri dish, and it certainly seeps into other parts of the country.
Well, and that's, I think, why it should matter to everyone everywhere what someone like Gavin Newsom is doing. And so I want you to go, if you can, let's go over some of his greatest non-hits, or, the worst things he's done in office. Real quick, kind of your top 5, Gavin really got this wrong.
Yeah, so I would say number 1 is probably housing. California has the largest homeless population per capita in anywhere in the country. And he came into California, into the governorship, and said, I'm going to be the housing governor. He had some very lofty goals and, wanted to do 3 million houses. And we've seen a fraction of the permitting on that. And right now, because of the unaffordability crisis that we're having here in California, only about 10% of Californians can afford a median priced home here in California. So I would definitely say the restrictions, and again, this is the radical enviro left that has pushed back the building and the permitting of everything. I would say that, the pushing for dense housing in areas that, are not looking for dense housing. All of these different policies have really made it so California is very unaffordable for people who want to live that California/American dream of home ownership. So I would say that is probably my number 1 for him. Next, I would say is education. And, not to be overlooked, the amount of time he kept the schools here in California closed while most of the country had reopened for quite some time, kowtowing to the teachers union. Here in California, we are 50 out of 50 states when it comes to literacy. And this is not that golden state and that golden state of education that I grew up in. The public schools, which were in high demand and had high expectations.
I kind of want to just make sure we touch this point, because this is such a big deal. People don't get what a big deal this was. When I grew up, and I'm not going to make any assumptions about your age, but I'm 50 years old. When I grew up through the 80s, the early 90s, the schools in California, New York, and Massachusetts were known for being fantastic. Virginia, too.
Yeah. Yep.
You cannot say
true.
that.
Yeah. And I, too, grew up in the 80s and 90s. And, looking back on the public education that I received versus what, my children would be receiving if they went to public school, it's not something that I'm interested in. I want to make sure that my kids aren't going to school and they're getting brainwashed. I want to make sure that my kids are going to school and they're learning arithmetic and they're learning how to read and they're passionate about learning about history. Those are the things that I care about, and I think that should be taught in schools. So let's talk about that, right? We're 50 out of 50 when it comes to literacy. Less than half of our students are reading at grade level. Less than a third of our students are performing at grade level when it comes to science and math. And what does this mean long-term? It means long-term that we are not getting the best of the best going through our education system. And it really has become a poor people's problem, because if you can afford to send your kids to a private school, you do it in California. And I truly believe that education is the civil rights issue of this generation. And that's why I'm such a huge proponent of school choice, because it shouldn't matter what zip code you're in or if you can afford private school or not to get a good education. Education is the great equalizer. And I think that is something that Gavin Newsom has seriously failed at.
Well, and I was just looking up the numbers because I hadn't seen an update in the last couple of years. But from what I see here, at K through 12, California is spending over $25,000 per kid per year now. That's a huge amount of money.
It's a huge amount of money, and it's more than what you pay for in most private schools.
Yeah, it's a lot more. I mean, actually, Reason Foundation has it basically $26,000 from 2023, so probably it's much higher than that by now. Why has this message not gotten across and cost Democrats more seats in California? Because they're really messing up people's kids. They're harming their futures. And how is that continue to be allowed?
Yeah, I think it's something that's somewhat of a slow burn, right? You don't see it necessarily right away. And the people with the power, the influence, the money, they don't have to worry about it at all. Their kids are going to private school because those are the choices that they are able to make for their children because they can financially make those decisions. So I think it's one of those things that's a slow burn. I would also very similarly to probably my number 3. And the reason why it's number 3 is because California voters have helped us to get back to a better place where crime is actually criminal here in California again. Over the last 15 years, Governor Newsom and California Democrats have championed soft on crime policies. And we have the proposition system here, and they sold Californians a bill of goods on whether or not these repercussions for criminal acts were really deterring anybody from committing crimes. And so, you've seen, I'm sure, the smash and grabs that we had, prior to Prop 36 passing last year, where we recriminalized many things. And it was a daily occurrence here. I'm in the Los Angeles media market. We watched people, walking into stores and stealing, $900 worth of stuff and getting a ticket for it. These are the types of things where you may not recognize it right away, but then one day, 6, 7, 8 years into it, you walk into your Walgreens and you can't buy toothpaste because it's locked up behind a cabinet. There's full-on aisles that are just completely locked cabinets. And if you want to purchase something, you have to ring the bell and someone comes and helps you unlock it. Forget about the 3-minute trip into CVS. It just doesn't happen. Fortunately, California voters voted for Prop 36 in the 2024 cycle. Unfortunately, the California state legislature refuses to fund Prop 36. So while local municipalities are now allowed to enforce the laws, and it's no longer just a ticket if you're stealing $900 worth of stuff, what we're seeing in many parts of the state is they don't have the funding to keep up with what they're doing. However, we are seeing a decrease because it is a deterrent. It is a deterrent when you do get locked up in Orange County, but you didn't get locked up in LA County. And now we even have a phenomenal district attorney in Los Angeles County, and Nathan Hochman, who is very focused on making sure that crime is penalized. And so that's getting a little bit better. It's probably why it's a little bit lower on my list. But it is that slow burn that people in California had to see for a good 8 to 10 years before they really realized, holy crap, this was a bad idea. Putting criminals back out on the streets, allowing people to steal without any repercussions, allowing different crimes to be committed where there are no consequences to your action, that's not such a great thing. So we're learning from that lesson, but certainly Gavin Newsom, he was against Prop 36. He was very in favor of the propositions and the assembly bills that had led to this decriminalization of crime and these soft on crime policies. So that would probably be up there with his greatest misses for me.
I always love those, from a year or so ago before the passage of Prop 36, but I always love those police body cam videos when someone didn't realize the difference between Los Angeles and Orange County.
Yes.
Like, welcome to Orange County. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. We will prosecute you. We will arrest you. And no, you're not just getting a citation here.
Yeah. No, and that, look, deterrence does work. What we know is that a very small number of people commit a very disproportional amount of crime, and there have to be penalties or they will just go wild.
100%. And we saw it, like, it was a real life enactment of that here in California.
So one thing I want to touch on a piece you had in the New York Post, and I assume now probably they mirrored it in the California Post, but what are the last two top 5 issues from California Democrats and Lord Gavin?
Yeah, so, those are really my top 3. I'm trying to think. I mean, there's just so many.
Yeah, there's so much, right? Housing ties to homelessness.
High-speed rail is one that just drives me insane. It's like, I cannot believe that this is still a thing. In 2010, I think it was 2010, when we approved this via ballot initiative, this was sold to us as a train from Los Angeles to San Francisco. I think that it's now something like Bakersfield to Merced. And no disrespect to the beautiful Central Valley, but nowhere to nowhere.
Right.
And we're, looking at billions and billions of dollars on top of what was said was required to build this. And then, Gavin Newsom standing in front of, a coal guzzling freight train trying to make announcements about how high-speed rail is moving along. It's such a joke. It's such a joke, the amount of money that's been spent on it. We lovingly refer to it as high-speed fail. And that would probably be up there for me as well as one of his, and that wasn't, he didn't start that, but he didn't stop it either. Like, he could have easily said, listen, this isn't what the people voted for. And at the end of the day, it's not going to be used in the way that we thought it would be used, because it's not even going from the places we thought it would be going to the places we thought it would be going.
Well, and a great contrast, by the way, for a lot of people who don't know it, is what Florida has done on their East Coast with a private rail system that costs very reasonable costs. It's very efficient. You can get all the way up and down the East Coast of Florida. It costs the government and taxpayers absolutely nothing, and it was profitable in year 2. Like, public sector, if you get out of the way, can do a lot of this stuff for all of us.
Another perfect example from Florida was when we had the hurricanes and the bridges collapsed, and Governor DeSantis had the, cement trucks ready to go as soon as it was clear, and they're building bridges in 3 days, and we can't get this high-speed rail finished in 15 years.
Right. As a good counterexample, June 6, 1933 was the day the first concrete was poured for the Hoover Dam. May 29th, 1935 was the day the last concrete was poured for it. 2 years in the 30s.
Crazy. And we can't get that. That would be probably my number 5 is our water issues here. There has been bonds that have been passed. We watch, we'll get some very, very rainy seasons here. Mm-hmm. And all of it just goes right out into the ocean. And our dams have not been built. The dams that we have not been repaired in the way that they should. And we could be saving all of this water, and instead we get rationed on water. It's really, really difficult to watch how bad someone can be at everything. It probably would be harder for me to put together a list of the things that he's done well or correct or just not detrimental to our state than it is to find everything that he has done wrong, because there are so many.
And this is such a simple, from an engineering perspective, this is such a simple, straightforward solution that takes like 90% of any potential problem off the table, right? Like, we know how to build retaining reservoirs. We know how to build canals. That we've known how to do this for literally a couple thousand years. Like, the Romans were pretty good at it.
But then we will hurt the Delta smelt.
I actually read a report that they're already gone. Like, they're just there's just random minnows. It's not even like any species left.
And let's say that it wasn't. Let's say that it's a serious thing that we have to. Okay, 100%. Governing is not easy. Governing is hard. Governing is making choices. I will always come down on the side of people, and that's what I think our government should do. Come down on the side of people.
Yes.
People need water. People need energy. Stop coming down on the side of the crazy wackos in your party. Come down on the side of people.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think you look at Florida is obviously the best example, right? But every problem they encounter, they put people first, and the outcome is a place that people really, really want to live in.
It is, and that's why we see so many people leaving the state of California. During my chairmanship, we had lost a congressional seat for the first time in our state's history. We went from 53 down to 52 congressional seats. In that same time period, we actually grew Republicans by 1 million new voters here in California.
Wow.
And so people were seeing what Gavin Newsom was doing, what the Democrats have done, and realizing this isn't the same Democrat Party that my parents grew up with in their union jobs. This was a very, very different, radical Democrat Party. But I bring up that loss of a congressional district for a good reason. And it's because things in California, our beautiful mountains and beaches, our wonderful Central Valley that provides food for the entire world, none of that has changed. The only thing that has changed are these radical policies. And that's why people are leaving. We lost over 700,000 people in 2022 alone. We are on track right now to lose 4 additional congressional seats by the next reapportionment.
Jessica, I'm unfortunately well aware of this because I live in Arizona and we've been meeting your neighbors.
Right. You get a lot of our Californians out there.
Yeah.
The good news for you is that most of them are trying to leave the crazy California policies.
No, actually, it's been great.
Hopefully it helps you.
One of the things, actually, just to touch on like a different red state policy that I think is actually important, people who migrate to red states by choice generally want to be in a red state and want to live in those kind of political conditions. Where I think red states have to be careful, and Arizona made some mistakes on this, but we've kind of corrected course a little bit, is when you bring in companies that bring their workforce with them.
Yeah, and that's the other problem that we've had, right? With this outward migration, we've seen full companies out of the Silicon Valley, out of the Bay Area. A great example of that is Elon Musk, who's moved a lot of his operations out of California.
Oh, that's a great point. Jessica, I want to expand on this because I don't know, people kind of missed with everything going on, right? Musk announced that he's rolling XAI into SpaceX, right? And he's announced that SpaceX is going to be going public at some point in the next couple of years or whatever. You're talking about what's likely to be the most valuable company on Earth for the next 20 plus years. And it had its home in California. Yeah.
And we look at, everything from Oracle to, and some of them that aren't leaving completely, but, even Chevron, Chevron had been here for hundreds of years. And we're going to take our base of operations out of California because it just doesn't serve us. Our friends at In-N-Out put together an East Coast hub in Tennessee. Look at where all of these places that they're going to in this outward migration that we're talking about.
Now, I haven't.
Going to Boston, Massachusetts, right?
No.
They're going to red states.
Well, I figured they'd all move to Minnesota.
Maybe we could do something there.
I think we need to trade up citizen exchange programs with some places, right? Like, hey, we'll send you some of ours. They're in with you, and you just got to send us some normal people back.
Yeah. So I actually talked to Governor Abbott about this once, and also Governor Lombardo about it. And they talk about, the same comments that you had made, the people that do it by choice, they want to be here. He was like, and thankfully that is more than the ones that are moving with their companies.
A lot more.
Because it's not always the same.
No, people should not fear Californians who want to come and live in a red state because that just means they are sick to death of this. I think the issue is it leaves folks like you with a big bag to fight, right, and fewer allies to fight it with. There's 2 things I want to touch on before I let you go. I want to get to the California Trailblazers because Chuck and I have talked about this a lot. Republicans need to do a much better job focusing on the lower level races.
Yeah. So California Trailblazers was my baby. And it was modeled actually after the National Young Guns program, which then Kevin McCarthy, congressman from Bakersfield, not Speaker McCarthy, along with the congressman, not Speaker Ryan, the congressman from Wisconsin, and Eric Cantor, who was the whip at the time, put together this program. And it was about building the bench and recruiting candidates that were right for the district. Once Speaker McCarthy had done that successfully at the national level, he asked me to do it at the legislative level because he wanted to make sure that we were continuing to build that bench so he could recruit congressional members. Then once I became chair of the party, we were able to make this a part of the party. I believe that it should be a function of state parties to recruit and train candidates at all levels of government. Number one, they can do it less expensively in most states because of campaign finance laws. You don't have to use separate types of dollars, which we had to do when it existed outside of the party.
Right.
But it's also a way to build out in areas where your party may have neglected over the years. And so this was a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to recruit candidates at all levels of government, prepare people to run for those city council and water boards and county supervisor seats. Here in California, we have 58 counties. Only about 14 are really big counties. The rest are smaller counties that have a lot of these local races. And so training candidates at every single level, it builds up that bench for when you're looking for legislative, you're looking for congressional, and you're looking for statewide candidates. And it helps them to be best prepared and know how to run campaigns. And then once they get elected, be ready to lead on day one.
100%. I love that stuff. Jessica, I have one last question before you go. Now, you mentioned In-N-Out. Are you an In-N-Out aficionado?
Oh my God, yes. Do you want to know what my order is?
Oh, I do. Yeah.
So I'm a double animal style tomato wrapped. A lot of people do the protein style, which is lettuce wrapped.
Right.
I do mine tomato wrapped.
Oh, I'm going to try the tomato wrap. That sounds way better.
Yes.
Okay. I love that. Here's an important question. Can you still get it medium rare in California?
I never choose at In-N-Out. They always cook it perfectly. But yes, I had a steak last night at Joey's and I got it medium rare.
Okay, because here in Arizona, you can go to a steakhouse and get a medium rare steak, but the fast food is required to be cooked well done.
Oh, I have no idea. I honestly don't eat fast food that much.
No,
In-N-Out is my go-to place.
I'm 50 now, and here's my thing, right? Like, you're trying to take care of your health. If you're going to cheat, you want to do it right. You want to have something delicious.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I still leave out the bun.
Right. Very good. You're better off. You're better at that than I am. There might be animal fries involved when I go there.
Oh my gosh. And the best part that my daughter who has celiac is gluten-free, so their fries don't ever get mixed with chicken fingers or anything like that. So it's a great place to get fries.
Fantastic. Jessica, thank you so much. We really look forward to having you back on the program here again in the future. Folks, follow her on X at Malong Patterson. And Breaking Battlegrounds will be back on the air next week.